Meeting of the Carson City Airport Authority for Wednesday, February 19th, 2024. Will please come to order. May we have the roll call and determination of a quorum, please?
Chair Pulitz, Vice Chair Norvell,
Here.
Treasurer Rogers, here. Member Flint,
Here.
Member Golden,
Here.
Member Horton, here. Member Hutter. A quorum is present.
Thank you. Michaela, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Approval of the minutes of past meetings of the Airport Authority. Do we have any minutes ready for approval? Okay. Are there any comments on minutes of past meetings? Seeing none, we would stand in need of a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Modification of the agenda. The chairman reserves the right to modify the agenda in order to most effectively process the agenda items. Items may be taken out of order. Items may be combined for consideration by the authority. Items may be pulled or removed from the agenda at any time. There will be no modification to the agenda tonight. Public comment. Members of the public who wish to address the Airport Authority may speak on agendized and non-agendized matters related to the airport. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person or topic. If your item requires extended discussion, please request the chairman to calendar the matter for a future Airport Authority meeting. Are there any comments from members of the public? Seeing none, we'll move on. Airport engineers report.
Awesome. So Brian Martinez-Smolas with Wood Rogers for the record. So just an update of where we are. So from the Airport Capital Improvement Program or plan, we have, we're working with the airport manager to update the ASIP for the 2026, fiscal year 26 to 2030 period. Last time the board had approved, we actually had 25 through 30. So really there's no change as far as the previous CIPs that you've approved. There is a meeting scheduled with the FAA Airport District Office for March, and so this ACIP will be discussed with them at that time. As far as projects are concerned, we have 2 projects on the list that are AIP funded. We have the RSA Drainage Improvement Project and the Main Apron Rehab Project. You've heard about these before in past meetings, but at this point, we are through scoping and just waiting for the grant funding from the FAA at this point. The last project is a airport-funded pavement preservation project, primarily some taxiway work. We are really at this point, we're waiting on survey that was associated with the drainage improvement project. And so we are working with the airport manager to try to find a way to maybe get that survey done now so that that project is not being held up any longer.
Good. Any questions from board members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Of course.
Appreciate it. Consent agenda, there are no items on consent tonight. Item number 1 under public hearings, for discussion and possible action, rehearing and adoption of resolution and notice of invitation to bid to Carson City Airport lease located at the south side of the airport, being 2.48 acres bounded by College Parkway, the airport parking lot, and the existing leases to the west and north of the subject parcel. Appropriate minimum lease rate and terms of lease and permitted uses set deadlines for bids and the date for the bid opening and consideration pursuant to NRS 244.283. Is Steve with us?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, great. So this item, as you may recall, was already heard by the authority in November. And our plan was to get the thing out for bid then. After it was approved by you, we discovered that we were not in a position to put it out because we didn't have the access to the air side of the airport locked down. And so we really couldn't go forward with it and accept bids for a parcel that didn't have access. We've since approved, you've since approved, we've gotten signed access from Mountain West, where we essentially, in probably easiest way to describe it is we essentially took away a section of their lease and compensated them for removing that section of their lease. And so now we have a taxi lane available to connect to the air side. So now we're ready to go forward and put the resolution out there. Much like we discussed in November, the statute requires that we set a minimum rental rate, and that has to be based on an appraisal. We do have an appraisal. The minimum rate is 64 cents per square foot per year, and also specify the terms, which are set forth in the proposed model lease that we use for airport projects. I can answer any questions you have, but basically we're just going forward now with the action that the authority took in November, but as it turned out was a bit premature.
Okay, so we have, we're proposing a deadline for proposals of April 10th, and then award of the bid at our meeting on April 16th. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Any questions from board members for Mr. Takis or Mr. Jenkins?
I have a comment about it. We did make one change in the lease language. Now that we have the legal description for the amendment that is awaiting approval from the city for the Mountain West parcel, we were able to clearly define the amount of space that's available for that access point, which is smaller than what's available anywhere else on the airport. So we included a limit of 78 feet for access in the lease. So whoever leases that land will be clearly informed that they don't have 79 feet like our design standard is for. They have a total of 78 feet available. So we did add that as a part of this process. This also kind of makes it to where the bid awarding of the lease is contingent on the city's approval of that lease amendment. So if there are further delays that make it to where the amendment is not complete at the time we accept bids, we're still okay because in the resolution itself and the notice, it states that it's contingent on that approval. So we're covering all of our bases.
But we anticipate that it will be
It should be.
prior to mid-April.
As of right now, there's only one more hurdle that I'm working on, and it's proving to be very time consuming. I would have preferred to have had it approved for this meeting or maybe even tomorrow, but we haven't been able to make that yet. So I'm still working. It's the history of that lease amendment. The lease that we're amending has 10 amendments, and that history is really complicated, and I need to have that clearly defined for the Board of Supervisors. So that's what's holding it up right now.
But functionally, we're going to move ahead.
As soon as possible. Yep.
Okay. If no comments from, John.
So Corey, does the earliest that this could get on the supervisor's agenda is 2 weeks from tomorrow? Is that true?
I don't think so at this point. It takes longer than that to get an item approved on the Board of Supervisors agenda. So we'll see. We have already started the process, so maybe the DA's office will get it in there sooner. They will help us with that whenever we've previously submitted an item. So I guess technically, yeah, you probably could at the soonest. I wouldn't expect that soon, though. because the history is not complete. So that needs to be completed before we can get it back to the DA.
Just to add to that, we actually did have the history in the briefing, but the DA's office wanted us to put it in a different format. And so that's what we're struggling with. And then at the same time, the DA's office is shuffling around some of their attorneys to different positions. And so we're just having a little bit of trouble tying that down. But actually, we don't expect any kind of problems from city approval.
Member Golden.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Harlow. Just a question, clarification. I thought when we discussed this, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we discussed this before, under item number 6, the resolution, that we had listed, what the proposed uses were or approved uses, but we specifically excluded fuel sales. Has that changed?
No, that has not changed. And if you look at the model lease, it does not permit fuel sales.
Okay, but the resolution does not state that. So,
Yeah, the resolution didn't jump into all the FBO activities because that would make the resolution unnecessarily long. But it
okay,
refers to the criteria, and the criteria include the stuff that's set forth in the model lease.
okay, thank you.
Anything further from board members? Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Any further discussion? If not, then we stand in need of a motion.
Well, I would move to accept the resolution before us today, an invitation to bid with no changes. So that would be my position.
Okay, Curtis, go ahead. Second. I want to just clarify in your motion, there are a number of items in here that we should indicate. Would you feel like expanding that a little bit in accordance with what Mr. Takis has provided for us?
Well, I think what we had said was that, correct me if I'm wrong, we are putting this resolution out, but it's subject to the approval of the Board of Supervisors on a pending lease amendment. I don't think that has any bearing on the resolution.
Award of the lease is contingent on city approval of the pending lease amendment providing airside access to the parcel. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that's in the resolution. So if you'd like, I'll read it right off the page there. So
Please.
I would approve the draft resolution and notice of invitation to bid for the land located on the south side of the airport, being 2.48 acres bounded by College Parkway, the airport parking lot, and the existing lease to the west and north of the subject parcel, with a deadline for bids of April 10th, 2025, and the date for the bid opening and consideration of April 16, 2025. Award of the lease is contingent upon city approval of the pending lease amendment providing airside access to the parcel.
Thank you, Michael.
Of course.
And Curtis, that second still stand? Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this agenda item and the motion? Seeing none, call for the question. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Those opposed? None. The motion carries unanimously. Item number 2 on public hearings for discussion, review and discuss FY 25-26 preliminary budget. Mr. Jenkins and Mr. Rogers.
I guess I can introduce the item and you can take it from there. So this is just a discussion item. This is not for board action. This is the first review of the preliminary budget. There will be a second opportunity to review this for approval. So if there's any findings today or between now and our next meeting, we can make some changes. There is a couple of things that could potentially change. Harlow pointed out the grant-funded projects looks a little funny because we determined back in 23-24, the SRE building, we incurred expenses, but we had not been reimbursed yet until the later year. So while this looks like it should be about $100,000 in net grant match required, it actually only ends up being $20,673. We're going to review that and make sure that's accurate. But it looks like because of how the expense and revenues incurred over the 2 different fiscal years is why there's a seemingly variance there. And John, would you like to take it from there going through the budget?
So as in previous years, Corey and I went through the budget line by line, trying to note changes from one year to the next. I have to say personally, this was the easiest one that I've done so far with Corey because our operations are relatively stable. It should be noted that the interest income item is a very large number, and it reflects that we are required to report the net present value of new leases. And so this budget assumes that we're going to lease the parcel that we're putting out for bid tonight, and the net present value, and it makes a budgetary estimate of what that net present value of that lease might be once it's put in place, and that will show up on next as an interest line item next year if it comes to pass. So that's not cash. That's just a calculation. So on a cash basis, this budget projects that we will end up spending some of our own money before the year is out. That we will end up with higher expenses than revenues to the tune of about $150,000 next year. And that will be money that will be because we're shooting to spend a significant amount of money on maintaining our pavement. That's airport money, as has been previously discussed. And so we think that that's important to do. We have the money to do it, so we're budgeting to do it. And that is somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000. It would be an expectation of what would happen, a reduction in our cash position. And of course, we have plenty of cash to cover that. So I think that's worthy of being noted. I think it's also should be noted that the budget includes a 5% pay increase for all staff. And that's if this board approves the budget, then that will become the pay increase for the staff, and it will become effective July 1st of this calendar year. So when you review the budget, you are actually also reviewing or approving a pay increase recommendation from Corey for his staff. Other than that, there's a few notes on the side. I hope they're self-explanatory. And as Corey noted, this will come back before the board next month for final approval of a preliminary budget. Then it will go to the state, and then we will have one more shot at the budget before a final approval of the final budget. That'll be in the May timeframe. So that's the way it flows.
As it is every year, right?
As it is every year. So basically, we just want to get numbers in front of the board. If you have any questions, comments, please forward them to Corey and I, and we'll incorporate them into the next revisions of these budgets as we go forward.
Thank you, John. Any comments from board members about the budget? Seeing none, any comments from members of the public? No. Okay, well, that sounds good. I mean, it looks really good to me. I'd say we're doing pretty well from the numbers I'm looking at.
I mean, Corey's doing a great job of bringing in the additional revenue as the opportunities present themselves. And we are running, Corey's running a nice tight ship as he has ever since he's been here. So yeah, I'm very pleased with the budget and with our performance to budget.
Thank you very much, John. On to item number 3, for discussion and possible action, consideration of pay increase for airport manager. Mr. Takis?
Yes, this is the time for the annual review of the airport manager. And so we've put together a briefing basically to you that kind of dovetails nicely with the treasurer's most recent comments. Corey's done a really good job of putting in place airport staff, managing them so that they can take care of a lot of the tasks that they can more easily focus on. And more importantly, it leaves Corey to focus on the bigger issues, the stuff that the authority members have prioritized for him. He did a lot of things this past year, and he keeps doing stuff that's great. The emergency preparedness exercise that was done out at the Jet Ranch hangar was really a good thing. We all learned really a lot about how the different emergency service providers would work together if we had a significant emergency event at the airport, like a multi-passenger aircraft accident, that kind of thing. And then his management of Kim, who has taken off of his hands a whole bunch of the day-to-day tasks, which are important things, but they're more ministerial than they are judgmental. And so she's taken over airport access control, gate cards, driving rules and regulations, and stuff like that. And she's really good at escalating matters that need to get to Corey when they need to get him, but otherwise taking care of stuff that doesn't. You may recall that last year when you did the review of Corey, you also looked at a comparison to regional salaries, and it was well below the airport managers at the other regional airports. And so you did you kind of right-sized his salary to get a little closer to the other regional airport managers. And so we didn't provide an additional analysis on that right now, but the last adjustment for airport staff was 5%. And as John just mentioned a few minutes ago, we've kind of built in the 5% for next year in the expectation that that's probably going to be a fair amount. And so that's in fact what he has asked for is 5%. And so that's what I'm recommending that we grant him. Obviously, anything you want to do is, your prerogative. So if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Steve. I just have a couple of comments. I took the liberty of looking at some of the airports in the local area myself, as I've done a couple of times in the past. I think this is very well warranted. I believe Lake Tahoe, Michael might know more specifically, but I believe Lake Tahoe, last time I looked, was at about 140,000. I think Stead is roughly comparable to that. The Boulder City Airport is at 133 right now. So, and Minden currently has a financial person employed by the city who is running the airport, but is not a certified manager and is not an airport person. And so I think this is well warranted, and I would encourage us to maybe think out of the box a little bit and discuss this at length. Could we start with you, Michael?
Sure. I know you kind of asked me a question. I don't know what John is earning in Tahoe. However, keep in mind whatever he earns, there's California state income taxes, which Corey, because Corey is working and living in Nevada, doesn't have to pay. So it's not exactly apples to apples in that regard. There's a tax rate in the state of California that is pretty significant. It goes up to 19.4%, as I recall, on income. So call it 10%. And the fellow working there loses 14 grand a year. Just food for thought. I'm just saying, it's a different situation. That said, Corey does an excellent job for us. I can't say enough good about him.
We want to hold on to him.
Absolutely. And also, Harlow, you are correct. The person I met, the new manager at Minden, and that person has absolutely zero aviation or airport experience.
Pretty tough to do the job in an informed way, I would think. You know.
Yeah.
John, comments?
I think the request for the raise is appropriate. I am going to vote in favor of it as presented. And I want to just make sure that the board understands that our manager is not necessarily on a yearly review schedule. I think that based on what we've done in the past and what I would expect in the future, that Corey can come and ask the board for a raise anytime he wants. And I think he should, as circumstances change at the airport. But with the current circumstances at the airport and the way that we're growing, I think this is, and with Corey's excellent performance, I think that the raise that's being proposed is correct.
Yeah, we have many things in the works right now. This one lease that we're discussing tonight, even at 64 cents, is going to bring in around $69,000 a year. Arrowhead Tenants, I believe, is getting close to project completion, I think.
They have 2 hangars that are about to be move-in ready, but then they do have a 3rd hangar that they're about to start construction on. There's also a 2nd hangar coming from the Ortiz development, and we also have the CTE hangar, the 30,000 square foot hangar, coming off of Charlie, and there's 3 through the fence permits in the works right now. One of them gets a lot of attention, but there's 2 others that are coming down the line soon.
So that portrays an extremely dynamic environment at our airport. I dare say maybe, well, I don't have facts, but I don't think that there's another airport, locally that is doing quite as much as we are simultaneously. And I think a lot of that is, as you pointed out, is due to Corey's efforts. And we want to retain him. Curtis, comments?
I think Corey's doing a great job, and I'm prepared to make a motion.
I remember one thing you said about city employees being hired, trained, and then they move on to the job they're really looking for.
Right.
Because they're not being adequately compensated for the work that they do.
That's very true. And our greatest assets are our employees whom we've invested lots of time and training and money into. And it's imperative that we hang on to the great ones.
Absolutely, and I think it was 2 years ago that we did an adjustment, right? I think, Corey, was that 2 years ago? February of '23?
The adjustment was last
Looking
year.
at the notes here,
The adjustment was a year ago,
Mhm.
Chair Norvell.
oh, okay. This says February of '23,
That was a 10% increase,
okay.
which that was an interesting year because CPI was up around 8% that year. So even though that actually is a large raise, normally that was actually only a 2% over CPI that year. It was actually 2024 where the adjustment was made.
Michaela, any thoughts?
I agree with everybody, and I think that Corey's raise is well deserved.
All right, public comment. Any members of the public who wish to comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. Any further discussion? If not, Curtis, may we have a motion, please?
I move to approve the 5% pay increase for Corey Jenkins effective March 1st, 2025.
I'll second that motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries unanimously. Airport managers report.
All right. It does not seem like it's been a year since the last review. So thank you all again for all of your kind words, and I hope I'm here long term. That's for sure.
We hope so too.
Okay, so Brian hit on some of these items already, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but we're revisiting the ASIP, even though we already it seems like we just did that because we did just do that. This is really administrative at this point because we just approved the same ASIP that we're presenting. We're just removing 2025 from it. We have a couple of important meetings coming up, so they're going to be on the same day. It's going to be the 27th of this month. We'll be presenting that new ASIP to the FAA in one meeting, immediately followed by the Through the Fence meeting, presenting the Through the Fence permit that the Airport Authority approved, contingent on FAA approval.
That'll be an in-person meeting on the 27th.
It'll be an in-person meeting in Phoenix, in Arizona. So Tim will be flying us down there for the day, and we'll be back the same day. So there will be minimal travel expenses for that. Definitely looking forward to that one. We've been working towards that for a long time. It's a big meeting, big day. Accounting improvements. So I've been in the process of implementing some of the corrective actions for the most recent audit. One of those findings is that the airport doesn't have adequate staff to adequately review all of our finances regularly. So what I've done is, working with John, we've invited our bookkeeper to our meetings on Fridays of every week. So our bookkeeper actually comes into the airport office one day a week and actually works on these items at the airport. So our administrative assistant, myself, and our bookkeeper are able to directly address issues that we may have on a weekly basis, and they're resolved right there at that meeting. So she's been staying for about 4 to 5 hours each week whenever she can make it. Tax season was difficult, but it's getting to be more regular from now on. During these meetings, we've actually identified some billing discrepancies. So we've reached out to those tenants, and we're working on all of that being resolved. And so far, we haven't had any troubles with getting those things resolved. But this is exactly why the audit had those findings and why we need to do something like this to address it. I'm really looking forward to the positive results that we're going to experience from this. We will likely experience an increase in costs for bookkeeping expenses. However, that is accounted for in the budget that we just reviewed. I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling next month. I will actually be taking a personal vacation. I'll be going on a conference to Washington, D.C. At that conference, this is specifically about government issues, and we will be briefed, AAAE will be briefed by the new administration of what to expect from the FAA and funding moving forward. I felt like it was really important for me to attend this conference because I expect things are going to change. Everyone knows that there's lots of changes happening with federal funding, and I want to make sure that I'm on top of that and I know how to plan accordingly. I'll also be attending the NBAA conference. At this conference, I've been asked to speak about hangar development because of all of the development we've seen at this airport. So that will be really interesting to be on that panel. We've benefited from being involved with the NVAA and also NATAC in that we've received matching funds from the state. So the state has a program where they will help us with our match for federal grants. We've received that once already for our AWAS project, and we're also in line to potentially receive that again once our PAPI project is fully closed out. Being involved with the NVAA and NATAC is definitely very beneficial for the airport. It's also very beneficial for the state overall. I've actually been asked to be the vice chair for the NATAC committee. That was voted on recently, and I am also looking into actually being on the board for the NBAA as well. That is not finalized yet, and we'll see if that ends up becoming a thing. My involvement with these groups, I think, is directly beneficial to the airport. There is also, of course, the trip to Phoenix as well, and that's right at the end of this month. I do expect this to impact the next board meeting. I'm going to be really strained on time over the next month, and I would expect the next meeting to be minimal, probably only the budget item. I'm not sure if I'll have the bandwidth to do much more than that. So I wanted to highlight that. Snow removal summary is attached. So I added that as additional information that I handed out to you all. We had 2 snow events. It's probably going to be the only snow events we see this season. We'll see what happens. I'd be okay with that. The first snow event was actually a unique scenario. It's something we're at risk at this airport. The pavement was really warm, but then we received quite a bit of snow. And what ended up resulting is we didn't actually accumulate 2 inches. We had less than 2 inches. So we didn't snow plow, but we ended up with a lot of snow melt, which then froze that night. Then we continued to receive snow. We ended up with about 1/2 an inch of snow on top of about 1/2 an inch of ice. Airport operations staff in Carson City Airport issues FICON NOTAMs. This is actually abnormal for a general aviation airport. Non-Part 139 airports are not required to do this. This is something that we do because we have very highly trained and specialized airport operations staff that are capable of doing this. Whenever they plugged this information into the system, it resulted in a 000 FICON, which forces the runway to be closed. So we actually had a runway closure that was not due to snow plowing, which is rare. If we have snow on the runway, typically the airport can still be open. But in the event that we have a 000 FICON, it does not give us the ability to issue the FICON. It tells us we have to close the runway. So that's what we did. We had about a 4-hour runway closure um, for this event. And that was definitely the right call. Rick and I consulted about this. You know, we're not required to do FICONs. But it is the right move to do. And he tested the friction, and it definitely was 000 in the
Tries
truck.
to get out there in a truck or something and,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The FICON is not based off of that. The FICON is based off of the conditions reported. We don't actually do a friction test, but we will take the truck out to see if it actually matches what numbers we're getting. And that was the case here. It was definitely unsafe conditions, and closing the runway was the right call for safety for the flying community in Carson City. We don't like closing runways. That's the last thing we want to do, but this definitely was the right call. We had a second snow event. This is a very detailed report. We don't actually usually keep this detailed of a report of snow events, but because of the unique nature of both of these snow events, Rick felt it was necessary to keep a more detailed report than normal. So you can actually look at the specific timeline of each of these events in this report if you would like to investigate that further. Snow event number 2. So this one we received a more snow than what was anticipated, 6 to 7 inches of snow. So it was a surprise when we got started snow plowing that day. We did not expect that volume of snow. I unfortunately got stuck in traffic that morning. There was an accident on Highway 50 coming from Dayton. There's nothing I can do about that. I was parked there for about an hour and a half. But Cody and Rick were able to start plowing right away after issuing the appropriate NOTAMs and AWAS message and all of that. So they were able to start right away. This is one of the greatest benefits of having 3 staff that's capable of doing snow plowing. At any snow event, there could potentially be someone who can't make it to the airport. Having 3 of us capable of doing it now is an enormous advantage to the airport. So 2 staff are able to start.
New truck performed well, I think you told me.
The new truck performed well. It was very interesting. It's only a single axle truck. It's not a dual axle. And it has a noticeably less traction than the old plow, which I guess we did expect that, being that it's only a single axle. However, everything else about it is far superior. So its turning radius is way better. It can do a 180 on the runway while the old plow can't. For example, it was used to clear the intersection of the runway, and the box plow actually didn't even need to go over there. It was able to do it by itself because of that additional tighter turning radius. The old plow wouldn't have really been able to do that in that time frame. So it performed really well. It's way easier on the driver. The tech in the old plow is from the 1980s, and it is very manually, physically demanding. It will wear you out. The new plow is way easier on the driver, so the driver doesn't get fatigued as much, is able to focus more and get more done. Fantastic plow. We're very happy to have it. And since we had it, both plows were able to start right away, even though I was behind from being stuck in traffic. Both the big plows started right away, and the runway and taxiway Alpha were almost entirely plowed by the time I got there. I mean, it's very possible we're going to be able to get it down once we get the process down of using both the plows. We're going to have Alpha, Delta, and the runway cleared in record time. That's for sure. We showed that this day. We opened the runway about an hour earlier than usual under perfect conditions, and about 3 hours earlier than our worst case scenarios. So the plow definitely played a part in us opening the runway sooner. It's actually more of an impact than I expected. I expected about a half hour sooner from the new plow. So being an hour sooner was really good. And it's going to get even better than that. We have some things to work out with our flow in the process with adding the new vehicle to it. And it'll get better and better as we get better at using it. So we received a notice from an airport user that was critical of the snowplow operation. The criticism was not warranted. Airport staff did a fantastic job out there. We had the airport runway an hour sooner, and the plow got to what that complaint was about. The tractor with the box plow got to it in the order that was planned. And airport staff did a fantastic job. But we did receive that one complaint. We always receive complaints during snow plowing operations, but airport staff really did an exceptional job this day. There's more details about the overall operation. If y'all would like to review that, it's in that report. There's about 1.5 hours of overtime, which is really not bad. I think if it happened on a different day, that would have been a lot worse if Cody had come in on his day off. But that was a regular work day. And that is all that I have for that. Let's see, I did not cover the operations numbers. Fuel sales. Fuel sales are way up over the year before. It's probably partially because of the winter conditions. We had that one closure with the first snow event in January, and that was only a 4-hour closure. So we were very minimally impacted by snow and winter weather conditions. So our annual fuel sales are up 46%, and ops are up 63%. This is an interesting inversion. Typically, our fuel sales have been higher increase in operations. I think that's reflected by the type of fuel sales. We had a really good self-serve sales, which supports higher operations of smaller aircraft. ADSB numbers are available below. The charts are available attached. Okay, that is it.
That's it? Legal counsel, if you're still with us, Steve.
Oh, yeah, I'm still with you. I just wanted to report that, as you probably all know, the legislature is back in session. They introduced about 400 bills in the first week of the session. So they're actually knuckling down and getting to work a lot quicker than they have in past sessions. I'm monitoring the bills that are coming through and the bill draft requests for anything that affects our airport or aircraft or taxes. And so far, there isn't anything on the radar. That tends to change over the period of the legislative session, so I'll be watching that. That's all I have to report.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Treasurer's report. Anything additional?
No, the numbers are all there, and there's no surprises from my perspective.
Looking good. Report from authority members. Any? Is there any public comment here at the end of the meeting? No? Agenda items for next regular meeting?
I think the one item that will be for sure is the budget item.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else at all that needs to come before the board? Seeing none, we're adjourned.